Welcome into the 615 Sessions podcast. We had to come outside. Sun's out. Hairdo's out. Corey Curtis of WKRN News 2 is hanging out here with us on today's episode. CC, it's a pleasure to see you.
I did not realize this was an outdoor show, or I would have done something differently.
What would you have done differently? Exactly?
I'd be outside.
I just, the cats wanted to come outside. Maybe you see one kill a bird in the background. We get a little Nat Geo effect going on to keep the people interested. But yeah, we got a lot of things to talk about with the Tennessee Titans NFL owners meetings taking place this week. Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon being asked questions about the roster. Quick reminder, though, that the 615 Sessions podcast is presented by Two Rivers Ford. See my Two Rivers Ford right back there. Looks great, doesn't she, Corey? Two Rivers Ford is where you go for all your 2023 model year Fords and for the best car buying experience possible since 1983. 40 years here in Middle Tennessee, doing business the way that you want to do business. Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet or online at tworiversford.com. Corey, what we haven't talked, I feel like, in a couple of weeks at this point, probably post-combine, maybe right after. Yep. How much different do you feel about this team since they've acquired the 6 players that they have? Is there any substantial difference to you in the competitiveness of this roster?
I mean, look, they've got some guys who can play on the offensive line who, I mean, the bar was set pretty low, right? They're better up front. They've still got more work to do. But, the words I use mostly are fiscally responsible when talking about the way Rand Carthon has handled free agency. He's basically, it looks to me, trying to fix this team's cap situation in kind of one fell swoop. Take your medicine now, do what you can. Most of these deals, very, short tenured, very. I mean, I think the 6 guys are like $13 million against the cap total,
and hardly any future money on the books, baby.
Yeah. So I mean, it's been very fiscally responsible, and I think as a new GM, where you want to announce your presence with authority, that could probably be tough to do. But I think also helped by the fact that this was not a fantastic free agent crop to go and overspend in. So I think they've had a measured and responsible approach. I think they're marginally better than they were. Are they good enough to compete for the Super Bowl? No, I don't think so.
Well, and, just much less to compete within the division, because that is where they certainly fell short down the stretch in 2022. But at this point, Corey, that you mentioned fiscally responsible at a necessity. Like, they got a lot of complicated contracts on the books right now. And restructures or dealing with past restructures from a previous administration is not an ideal circumstance for a new GM who may or may not want to make a splash in the first year of his tenure. And we'll see what happens with the Jeff Simmons deal. But right now, I mean, they are being talked about as being potentially able to or open for business on 3 of their most important players, those being Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry, and all-pro safety Kevin Byard. I don't know whether those 3 players are completely safe. I don't know that those players are, certain to be moved. I don't know what their status moving forward is going to be, other than a comment that we'll hear from Rand Carthon on Derrick Henry here in just a little bit. But should there be any players who are untouchable on this roster right now? Because I'm of the belief, hell no.
Well, like I generally say that everyone is replaceable. But I mean, AJ Brown is going to be tough to replace.
They've had a hard time doing that.
Yeah. And I think, Jeffrey Simmons don't grow on trees. And so I have a hard time parting ways with him. It's comical to see other fan bases come up with trade scenarios for Jeffrey Simmons. Like the Titans are just going to give him away.
That's
like
right.
if you want Jeffrey Simmons, you're going to have to pay. You're going to have to pay big time. But no, I mean, there are not many guys that I would view as untouchable. And, my opinion on Derrick Henry is not a popular one. Believe me, Derrick Henry has been an amazing player for this football team. And I grew up in Chicago. If you had suggested to me trading Walter Payton or releasing him at some point, those would have been words that would have cost you your life. Okay, I would have killed you. So I understand fans' emotions about that, but I'm not a fan anymore. I'm a guy in an office looking at roster building and looking at the future more analytically. And I said to you before the show, are you going to give Derrick Henry a third contract? Because this is the end of the line. And I think even the most passionate fan doesn't see that coming. And so, my point with him is, well, what's the point then? You've got 1 year left. Now, the reason I think he'll still be with the team, Buck, is because I think he's worth more to the Titans than he is to anyone else.
Yeah.
And I unless you just want to clear up the cap space, you're not going to get a lot for him, because a team is doing you a favor by taking the money off the books. That's, kind of like when the Preds traded away PK Subban. I think they got 2 2s for him, and people were like, "Oh, they didn't get anything for him." And I'm like, they got $12 million off their books. That's what they wanted, so they could go get Matt Duchene. And so, with Henry, I just don't see there being a lot of trade value there. Tannehill, I don't know how much trade value is there.
Not until we know where the hell Aaron Rodgers is playing next year. I mean, for God's sakes.
And I'm probably taking this further than you wanted me to, but with Kevin Byard, Kevin Byard's different to me, because I think he still has 4 to 5 peak years left. He's never missed a game.
I know.
For a team that's used 180 players the last 2 years, you're talking about getting rid of a guy who's never missed a game. And, we always have these Mount Rushmore discussions. He's a 2-time All-Pro. Do the history of the Tennessee Titans, do they have another 2-time All-Pro?
Oh, God, because Derrick's not even that. I mean, it's a really, really difficult thing. But that's the first place that they went, Corey. That's what makes this all such a fascinating.
Yeah, and you talked about the restructures. And that's what this is a victim of. Not of his contract, but of the restructure of his contract.
Right. And that was done as a result of, other infractions, whether you want to consider them infractions at the time or not. But Julio Jones is having a substantial effect on this team's future competitiveness and financial capabilities, with so much dead money on the books and having restructures for both Ryan Tannehill, Kevin Byard, or all three, Kevin Byard, Ryan Tannehill, and Derrick Henry.
And no 4th-round pick this year because of that.
Correct. It's a really complicated situation. Now, I think let's stay with Kevin Byard for a second there, because Corey, you and I have been doing this long enough that they don't approach players. Restructures are common. Pay cuts are not.
Yeah, totally different things.
And so a team does not approach a player about a pay cut without being prepared to do something. Now, we have time at this point as we sit here on March the 29th, as we're doing this podcast, for them to find common ground and for Kevin Byard to continue to be a Titan. But should they continue to remain at this impasse, I think he's the least likely player among the three that we're talking about to be on this roster in 2023, which is insanity.
Yeah, I don't get. I mean, he's a great player, and like I understand it's a business, and ultimately you've got to get where you've got to get, but I also think about the message that you're sending to your football team. That this guy has done everything, and I mean everything, the right way. Buck, if you watch every game before last season when they go line up for the national anthem, there is one person standing next to Mike Vrabel. You know who that is?
It's Kevin Byard. 31 on his chest.
That's right. I mean, this team means a lot to him. I asked him when the season was over, was it important to finish your career here? And he jumped all over it. It is. So, and again, we're not privy to that conversation of how they asked, why they asked, what was the context of the ask. I mean, shoot, they may have had a whole easel demonstration and saying, Kevin, this is where our cap situation is at. Yeah. If you will take $2 million a year less, we can do this, and this. We know it's a big ask. We know you've done everything you can for the team, and you haven't done anything to warrant making less. We're just looking for a solution. I mean, that could be the conversation. I don't know. I'm not there. But to start there, when you've got other areas that you could save money, and I understand not wanting – I know there are people out there who want to kick the can down the road forever and just keep kicking the can and keep kicking the can. Eventually, the can is full, and you can't kick it any further. man, that's a tough ask, and that's a tough swallow for me.
Yeah, and I get that, but like, so a lot of and a lot of fans are reacting to this. Corey Curtis of WKRN News 2 is here with us on the 615 Sessions podcast. We're talking about the Titans situation and how they're trying to maneuver, because they do still have to maneuver against the cap right now. I mean, this $8 million that they have, it's not really effective cap space. It's
like $4 million to sign their draft picks.
Yeah, it's and that's, that doesn't even account for injured players, pool of money that they'll have to have for injuries to account for as we get into the season, and then practice squad on top of that, which is not a huge amount, but it's enough when you're this tight the way that this team is. The thing that I think kind of sticks out to me, because it does seem like such a foreign concept to all of us, because we're here, we've been here, we know Kevin Byard's career, not just as a Tennessee Titan, but as a damn Middle Tennessee Blue Raider, where his jersey is retired, and he obviously means a great deal to this community. But I mean, fans wanted a fresh perspective, a fresh set of eyes on this thing, Corey, and the fresh set of eyes just told them that their safety that's going to count, their all-pro safety, their beloved safety that's going to count $19 million against the cap isn't worth it. Right now. So I do think that fans have to keep that kind of discussion in mind when you want new eyes, you want fresh perspectives, you want all these things. Then they come in here and tell you something you don't like. That seems to be the kind of, at least that's how I'm processing this at this point. Because safety is not a value position in the NFL right now.
It's not, but it's not his fault that he counts $20 million against the cap. You're asking Kevin Byard to clean up the team's mess. All right. Whether it's by pay cut or waiving him, you're
more than he's already had to do so on the field, by the way.
You're asking him, you're saying, we have screwed this situation up and we're going to tap you to fix it. And I don't think that is fair. And I understand why safety is not as valued a position, but Kevin Byard, as I've said, and you've said, is a 2-time All-Pro. And he is one of the few guys on this roster who I can point to and say, he won this game. He won this game. He gave them a chance to win this game. Just go back to the Rams game in L.A. Do they win that one without him? How about the overtime game in Indianapolis? Do they win that one without him?
Are they competitive in the Dallas game on Thursday?
Oh, my God, no.
Nobody else plays except for
Yes, and he's like, I am playing. I mean, he's a difference maker. And so when you look at positions, you say, yes, he plays this position, but he's a difference maker. How many difference makers are on the roster? And I have a hard time trading away difference makers. We've already seen one of them get traded away, and they have had a hard time replacing that. I understand $20 million is too high. And the thing we haven't mentioned here is another contract was given out. And so now they're $33 million at the safety position because of the Amani Hooker deal. All right. I like Amani Hooker. I do. He's already missed more games in his career than Kevin Byard. All right. Why don't you go to Amani? I know he just got a new deal. Ask him to save you some money because he hasn't done near as much for your football team as Kevin Byard has.
No, it's crazy. I mean, somebody who's done a tremendous amount for the Tennessee Titans is Derrick Henry. Rand Carthon was asked by some of our colleagues who were in attendance at the NFL owners meeting this week about about Derrick Henry specifically being on the trade block. This was Rand Carthon's response.
There's nothing new to report. It was an erroneous report that came out. I've spoken to Todd, Derrick's representative, and we're in a good place. So it's nothing new to report from there. I know Derrick trains like crazy in the location where he trains. I know the location. I don't want to put it out there, but Derrick is going to be Derrick. He's going to take his time away and do what he has to do to make sure that he's ready to go. So I feel we're in a good place.
Erroneous. Sounds like a Stephen A. Smith first take word.
Look, you can split hairs on this. Do I think he was trying to trade Derrick Henry at the combine? No, I don't. But I do think he was trying to find out his value. And I think that's smart. He's taking over his football team. He needs to find out what everybody's worth.
Yeah.
As he's trying to put things together. Because if he goes to the combine and finds out I can get a 2 and a 3 for Henry, then he starts to look at, well, this is the way we can shape our football team if we make this sacrifice now. If he goes and finds out at $12 million, I can only get a 5 or a 6 for him, he probably looks at that and says, that's not enough to justify moving on. So shopping him, which is physically saying, hey, he's yours for this, is different from saying, if Derrick were available, what would you be willing to give up? And I think those are two different things. Now, they both can ultimately lead to the same place, but they are two different things. So I'll agree with him there.
Yeah, and that I think is what it comes down to, because if you can do the McCaffrey deal for Derrick Henry, you do it yesterday. You do it.
He'd be gone. He'd already be gone.
As for what you mentioned, 1 year left on his deal, and there really cannot be a good argument for a third contract for Derrick Henry, specifically here in Tennessee, though he may go on to have productive years beyond his time here in Tennessee. I think that is the biggest differentiating factor. If you can get anywhere close to the value, San Francisco admittedly overpaying for Christian McCaffrey and getting as much, hell, they almost had to have him play quarterback because of how down bad they were this year. I think that Derrick is as you said earlier, he's not as important for other teams as he is for this one in particular.
Yeah, no, I mean, because we talked about difference makers. He's their difference maker on offense, right now. Now, I hate to pin last year and just, coming off the foot injury. Do we think he was as good last year as he had been the other years? I think he was good, but yeah, he didn't pull away from people like he did in previous years. And that's cause for pause, right? That's cause to say, all right, so if he's lost an eighth of a step, that's the difference between a 20-yard run and an 80-yard run, which is a big difference in a football game. Now, is he still effective? Heck yeah. Can he still carry the ball 30 times? Everybody's still looking at him. Can he still sell play action? I mean, he can do lots of things to help the Titans. But there's a difference between having him on your roster for $12 million and another team saying, all right, we'll take on your $12 million and give you away a draft pick, even though we've only got him for 1 year. Now, and I know it's your show, but I'm going to ask you a question because we're talking about him being gone.
I think it's better that way.
Do you think that it's possible, as they look to free up cap space, that they could extend Derrick by a year?
Entirely. Yeah.
Yeah, 1 year, give him some money, create those voidable years, which I would like to see the NFL get away from, because I think it's just creating ugly cap messes that, really are. I don't think they're in the spirit of the game. That's my opinion. I know
that's an interesting perspective.
I think you balance your books or you don't. The Bobby, because this is basically the Bobby Bonilla deal. This is what they're doing.
Well, and to make it to take it to another major sport, the NBA, like the Warriors have so much financial flexibility with the luxury tax that they are just clearly not bothered by. Yeah. They can continue to keep the core of a championship team, a record-setting team, a historical team in place, and still add pieces. While, teams who are not as cash flush, which, for example, Tennessee is not a cash flush organization within the NFL, you are fighting uphill on multiple fronts as as we see price points reported for the Commanders that are in the $6 billion neighborhood, which is starting to price out even the mega rich who already
Isn't that amazing that a person as horrible as Daniel Snyder just keeps on winning? He just keeps on winning. It's horrible.
I think it's a truly unique situation where, hell, he could even decide to make it worse, Corey, and he could, on the way out the door as he sells his team for $6 billion and goes on a yacht in the French Riviera to hide from whatever congressional hearings are after him. He could give Lamar Jackson a fully guaranteed contract on the way out the door and just go double middle fingers to the ownership. Now you all have to pay Joe Burrow and Herbert and on and on and on. I would love that.
It sounds like something he would do. He is a spiteful dude. But yeah, so, as we look for ways to free up cash for the Titans and cap space, I think the idea of extending Tannehill a year or so has also been floated. But maybe you do extend Derrick by a year, even if you don't think he's going to be on your team next year.
I think it's infinitely more likely that Tannehill get an extension than Derrick, just because of the nature of the position and the premium on quarterback versus running back. Yep. But I don't think that a Derrick Henry extension, a 1 year extension, is off the table by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, I think it makes a lot of sense.
You could free up at least $6 million, $7 million. That's a substantial amount.
It would damn near double what you have to work with right now, for those of you who need that put into context. Last one for Corey Curtis, who's kind enough to give us some of his time this afternoon. Should Malik Willis preclude this team from taking a quarterback in this year's draft, whether that's, one of them that falls in the first round, if they stick and pick at 11, whether that's Hendon Hooker on day 2. Do you think that this is a situation where they have a good enough situation behind Ryan Tannehill that they should be out of the quarterback game right now?
Based on what I saw last year, and that's all I can base it on, I'm surprised you didn't light up in flames when you said that.
Well, I try to be diplomatic from time to time.
And look, I know that there are still people out there that love Malik, and maybe, Geno Smith took 10 years. All right. I mean, Geno Smith was god awful.
It's true.
And last year he went to the Pro Bowl. And so maybe Malik does make a giant jump from year 1 to year 2. It would have to be a pretty massive jump. And I don't want to pile on the young man and bury the young man. But
but like, we shouldn't even have to preface it, Corey, that way. Because you're correct.
Mm-hmm.
He's so early in his career. God love him.
Yeah.
Like, he's just trying to figure it out. But the fact that we have to I think, coddle a certain degree of Titans fans about this stuff, who are hyper emotional for reasons that I cannot explain, about a dude who just got here, even though he's a lovely guy. Like, I think you should be judged based on your performance.
Look, when his performance
is insufficient.
When he came in against the Chargers and completed those 2 short passes right off the bat, we were all thinking the same thing. Holy cow!
Yeah. And
that was 2 short passes. And we were all blown away by it. That's not a good bar, all right? That's the bar being set really low. Look, the biggest issue I had with him last year was this. He does not trust what he sees. He drops back, and he reads it, and he can't rip it. Yeah. He's paralyzed. And that could be because he's getting too much information right now, and it just has a hard time. But he got taken out of a preseason game because he wouldn't throw the football.
Yeah.
And late in the season, there's a reason Josh Dobbs started, okay? It's because they needed to win, and they knew it. And look, I could tell you, they thought they could win some games with Malik Willis when the preseason ended. I think my belief, and I know that for a fact, okay? Yeah. They thought Malik could win them some games. But I having that thought process, I have to think they thought he was going to progress along faster than he did, because he wasn't good enough. I mean, when they went to overtime against Kansas City, unless the defense scored, you knew the game was over.
Yeah, they had no chance to advance the ball with the way that he was incapable of operating a passing game.
And I will finish it by saying this, Buck. It would not be fair to the other 52 guys on the roster if that's what you did. That's all.
I love that as a dismount from Corey Curtis of WKRN News 2. He is always kind to give us some of his time. Does great work for WKRN with the rest of the sports team there. Buddy, it's always good to see you. Sooner rather than later, we already have workout dates for the offseason.
Yeah.
So we're all going to get back together here in the very, very near future, and certainly looking forward to be crowded it into a small media room while the NFL draft goes on for 3 days. And, maybe it will be slightly less exciting than it was last year.
I'm really excited for the next month because, you probably know Rand and Mike closer than I do at this point. I have no idea what they're going to do. I have no idea, because this thing could get completely torn apart and look completely different. You could sell that to me in a heartbeat. Or it could just kind of get tinkered with a little bit. I don't know. Could they trade up and pick a quarterback in round 1? Heck yeah, they could.
Yeah.
Heck yeah, they could. Could you wait in round 2 to take Hendon Hooker? I'd be excited about that. I love Hendon Hooker. So, there's a lot of things that they can do, a lot of places they can go. And I'm excited to see how Rand Carthon handles it the rest of the way, as long as that doesn't include cutting Kevin Byard, which to me would be an unforgivable thing.
Well, this franchise has done unforgivable things before.
Yes, they have.
The last 7 games of their season were damn near unforgivable, but we'll have plenty of time to talk about all of these things.
Speaking of unforgivable, I'm going to cut you off.
Please do.
And I'm sure you've talked about it. How on earth does Monty Ossenfort watch Dennis Daly systematically destroy a football team and then give him a 2-year contract in Arizona? Does he want to pick first next year? Is that the goal? Does he want Caleb Williams?
That or he hates Kyler.
He wants Kyler to leave. He wants baby Grogu out.
Listen to me. I saw that, and I had to like I did the fake Adam Schefter thing where I'm like checking to see if somebody paid for it.
Well, it was the 2-year deal. That was the big one. That was, and it wasn't a GM who didn't have him. Monty watched him.
You know what? For as much shit as Ryan Cowden got for being overseeing things after John Robinson left and ultimately not getting that job, I like Monty personally very much. He's a nice man, and I'm happy for him and his family that he got the opportunity. As I preface this before I say something,
absolutely.
It is a fireable offense out the gate. Out the gate, Monty, baby, come back to us. What are we doing out here?
You think you'd take some safe moves to get started with?
Yeah, that is it. It's as safe as it gets. That's a bomb shelter, duck and cover type situation.
It's safe if you want to draft Caleb Williams.
Corey, I appreciate you spending some time here, brother.